definitely. The deeper I got, the more it seemed like um, God was challenging me to trust Him. Um, so the deeper that I got, the more that I started opening up other areas of my life to Him. And I mentioned about work and how He was affecting work, but I hadn't fully allowed Him into that space. And it was kind of like I'd only allowed Him into that particular job, that particular workspace, because I really needed to rely on Him for everything. And I said that I was looking to leave that job. And when I understood that God was in control of that situation, I realized that He was in control of when and how I would be released. So the deeper that I got into Him in faith, the more that He required me to step out. And I remember my last year being at that job, I ended up traveling a lot more than I've ever done in life. Went out of the country and things like that. And I came back from a trip with the same friend group from Italy, and that was it. Completely changed my perspective of um, I think really allowing your work and allowing your means of income to dictate your life, to dictate your perspective, and to dictate what matters. And that being said, when I came back, I think a few days later, um, God, He spoke into me in a way that I'd never experienced before. Like he He spoke to me when I was sitting at my cubicle, and there was like a fire that came up in my chest, and He said, "Put in your 1 week's notice."
Ooh.
And I went straight to the bathroom and I started negotiating with the Lord. I was like, wait, first of all, I'm
Yeah.
leaving. Second of all, 1 week or usually if this is a 2 weeks type of deal. And so I wasn't, even though all that time was trying to leave, the fact that it was so abrupt, who was expecting that? And I was like trying to negotiate more time with him. And I felt like Hezekiah a little bit there, like, can I just get one more year, kind of thing. But after I realized that he was firm on this, I went back to my desk and I started typing up a resignation letter, and I handed that in. Um, and 1 week I was gone, and I remember my last day on the job being Valentine's Day, February 14th, and I left. And I remember the last day on the job going to the park before going back from my lunch break and saying, Lord, you've asked me to step out, and I was on this like big high. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen, but the Lord's going to do some things and blah blah blah. And then I came down to this like sobering. Okay, Lord, I'm trusting you. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just need you to tell me that you got this, that you have me, and that I don't have to worry about anything. And I need you to lead me because I have no idea what's happening. You know what's happening, and I just felt this peace. So I left that job, and I remember waking up the next day, and I was like, okay, God, what are we doing? And that was when he brought me to the first interval of learning how to be an artist.
Mm.
And so for 3 months, I was working from home. I was working on this project with a friend of mine who we were working virtually, and working on the sketchbook project. I was doing all these different art projects, and I was applying for jobs. And that's all I felt to do. And the whole time, I had some scares here and there, but with my little savings that I had, he never let anything run dry. Savings, it came, it went, but every time that I needed something, he provided it. So my rent was covered, everything was covered, and I left for weeks, so I didn't have unemployment or anything like that. And he would show up through people offering to help me, or friends leaving money in my room for me, or things like that. Like he just showed up in unmistakable ways. So he led me to go to places, or I needed money for transportation or things like that. I wasn't lacking for anything. I wasn't lacking food or anything like that. And I remember finding applying for jobs, finding this weird job notice, like application, and it had like maybe 5 bullet points on it. And when I went to go look at the job, the work site, the website, it wasn't working. Like I didn't know what this job was about, but I knew that I was supposed to apply to it, so I did. And they didn't get back to me until like a month later, and I think that was like the first week of April. And then they didn't get back to me on anything after that until like a month after that. So I wasn't thinking about this job at all. I had applied to all these other things, and it's like, okay, God, I don't know what you want to do, but I know that you know what you're gonna do. I told you what I'm looking for, and I remember when I got called back for the first interview for that job, I went to sit down with the person who would be my manager later, and she was talking to me. We went through this interview. I could feel there were times where she reminded me of my mom, and just different aspects of her personality reminded me of my mom, and I felt peace there when I was there. And it was like we were just having a conversation. And then she immediately, she started telling me about the benefits. And that was when God started talking to me. And while her lips are moving, and I'm trying to pay attention to what she's saying, the Lord is speaking to me as she's saying things and saying, remember that you wanted to work at a nonprofit. Remember that you wanted to work in
Wow.
a place with artists. Remember that you wanted to work in a place that has summer Fridays. Remember. Like he just was giving this list, and most of the things on that list, I didn't even ask him for. I
Mm,
said it in my heart, and I was talking to a friend who was like, "Oh, you should apply for this, and you should apply for that," and she was trying to encourage me, and in my mind, I was just doubting it because I hadn't had any background in any of that stuff. I wasn't qualified for it
mm.
at all, and I was not qualified for that job. I remember the second interview I had, and the person who would be my supervisor, he was like, "Okay, so have you had any experience in payroll or accounts payable or anything like that?" And I said, "No." And he asked me that question twice, and I said, "No, I have not." And I left it. And I
Amazing.
got called back and offered the job. Yeah, because
Wow.
and that was when I realized if God has something for you, it's for you. It doesn't matter if you're not qualified for it. It doesn't matter if you have any experience for it. God said that that's yours, it's yours. And it's only going to be yours if you show up.
That's right.
And so that the first interview, I walked out of there and I heard trumpets out of nowhere.
Wow.
I heard yes. So by the first interview, knowing that I had to go to a second interview, I knew that the job was mine.
Mm,
So when I went to the second interview, it didn't matter what happened. All I needed to do was go.
that's right.
And that was the first. So that was, the first time I really allowed him into the work, the work and the income section
That's
of
right.
life. Yeah.
So so Candace, this is truly a walk of obedience, and there's a lot not many folks walking in true obedience like that, where you just give it all up in faith, because that's the most important pillar. Think of it
Right.
this way. It says in the Bible that do the birds worry about where they sleep and where they eat? No, they don't. So why do we? So
Exactly.
ultimately, you're going on this full faith journey, but not only did you go in faith, but you also understood that the Lord's opening up the doors to what you are actually created for. So
Mhm.
God knows what's only on your heart, but not only does he know what's on your heart, he knows what you're good at, and he knows what
Right.
your talents are, and he
Yes.
knows all these things. So he's stating to you, trust, put the 1 week notice, and you did that. But then what did he give you? He gave you the fire to say, choose your talents, because your talents is something innate. And that's very kind of eye opening as well, because think of it this way. A lot of folks are going out there for jobs, right? Everybody's talking about a job nowadays, but nobody's going for their job based upon what their specialty skill is inherently.
Exactly.
And that is what God wants. God wants your inerrant skill to be utilized for his kingdom, where
Mhm.
most folks are turning that off and saying, "Well, that's not gonna pay me enough. I'm not gonna do that." Or "No, that's not where the money is." That doesn't matter, because if God has a plan, God will take care of all things, and you are exactly an example of that, Candace, from your walk of essentially needing everything from the Lord, from your food to your rent, to your payments, and
Mm,
he provided that to you where many people wouldn't even take that leap of faith out because maybe they weren't be ready
mhm.
yet, or maybe just too nervous. But ultimately, that's what all the prophets did. They always walked in faith, and that's what you're doing as well, Candace. You're walking in faith, and now you're seeing the fruits of it through obedience.